Number 1. When I was in Girl Scouts, I had some pretty awesome friends in my troop. Unfortunately, my leader's husband ruined that for all of us. But he ruined just about every event, large and small, for me. Mr. D liked to pick on me. A lot. If it wasn't me laughing along with everyone else, it was because he didn't like my clothing. He was ultra conservative and very religious. And once, it was because he didn't like how I led the Pledge of Allegiance, Girl Scout pledge, and how I sang This Little Light of Mine at the night's meeting. I usually cried at least once at each event. The thing that caused the dissolution of our troop, and finally made all the other parents realize just how big of a creep Mr. D was, happened when I was 12. Our meeting was to have a sleepover that night, and we had all been asked to bring our favorite outfits and makeup and hair supplies for a fashion show. Everyone, me most of all, was relaxed more than usual. Mr. D was on a camping trip with the Boy Scouts. We did our usual meeting and badge work, then spread out over the upstairs of the house, changing our clothes in the hallway, on the landing, and 2 or 3 in the bedroom belonging to the scout leader's daughter, also a member of the troop. We did hair and makeup and headed downstairs to show off for each other. After the fashion show, we all changed upstairs once again, and swarmed back down to destroy the chips and soda, and the pizza that had just been delivered. Stuffed full of tasty junk food, we all settled in for scary storytelling, when the biggest horror of the night made an appearance. Mr. D came down the stairs for some pizza. It turned out Mr. D had canceled his Boy Scout campout for bad weather. He'd been upstairs the whole time, hiding in his dark bedroom, the one whose door stood open the whole time we had been changing our clothes. Half the girls went home that night, and only 2 ever went back for a meeting after, which basically meant everything we had planned had to be canceled. Parents spread the word, and within 2 months, the troop had officially been dissolved. Mr. D, you were a jerk, and as it turns out, a creepy pervert that spied on a bunch of pubescent girls at their most vulnerable. You would ruin something I enjoyed, and I hope karma gets you big, if she hasn't already. Number 2. Back in summer of 2012, when I was 11, I spent the night at my best friend Anna's house on a regular basis. She lived in a very wooded area, so her entire backyard could be considered a forest. We loved playing in it, and I practically never went inside when I was at her house. Because her entire backyard consisted of trees, there weren't many places to put things, like a trampoline for instance, so they had to place it pretty far back in a small clearing. We were very naive kids, and believed that nothing could happen to us in the woods. We were so sure of it that we played around in them at night as well. One night, in particular, we decided that we would go and play on her trampoline in the clearing. The trampoline was very odd, and I was surprised it could still hold people. It didn't have a net either, which I hated because I feared I would go flying off one day with nothing to catch me. We took our shoes off and climbed onto the trampoline. Something about jumping around in the dark was exhilarating. I was having a blast, but as we continued to jump, the atmosphere changed. I couldn't tell what it was, but the woods seemed darker and more intimidating than before. All of a sudden, Anna stopped jumping and completely froze, staring off into a specific spot in the woods. I stopped too and looked at her. "There's a person," she whispered, pointing to the direction she was looking. My eyes widened and I turned my head to look for myself. Sure enough, there stood a tall, shadowy figure of a man. He noticed and tried to slightly hide himself behind one of the thick trees. He was still visible though, and absolutely terrifying. We stood, frozen and unable to yell out or run. We just stared at him. He was a bit further back, but we could still see every movement. He slowly moved out from behind the tree. My eyes moved to his hand, and I could tell that he was holding something. I had no idea what it was, but it made the entire situation even scarier. Anna's senses finally kicked in, and she pushed me to move, screaming for her mom. I flew off the trampoline, making one big leap and landing hard on the ground. I was once thankful that there wasn't a net on her trampoline. Anna began to run, but I looked back first. The man had began to run after us as well, and he was fast. I screamed like I'd never screamed before and took off for her house too. It felt like hours had passed before we reached her back porch. We threw ourselves into her living room. We were both actually laughing from hysteria, but the fear I felt in my stomach was sickening. Her mother, after hearing what happened, stomped onto the back porch and looked around the backyard. She couldn't see anything, but she yelled at them to get away while they still could. I'm happy to say that we never saw that guy again. Of course, going around the woods at night would never happen again, and I hope that I will never have to experience another encounter like that for as long as I live. Number 3. The following story was verified by Reddit. Let me give you some background information on the situation. My name is John. I was 16 at the time of the event, in the middle of my junior year. I'm from Asian descent and am nearsighted, which means I can't see far away, which is like a couple inches away from my face. This all started when I was in my homeroom. I'll call my teacher Mrs. H. Now, Mrs. H was a young woman in her 30s, but looked much older than she was. She taught history, and I have her second period. Anyway, so first period just ended, and I'm getting into class. As I walk over to my seat, I see a skinny, black-haired kid sitting there. "Are you the new kid?" I asked. "Yeah, name's Kyle." "Cool, name's John. I don't want to seem rude, but you're in my seat. Could you please move?" He gave me this face that a child makes when you don't give them what they want. He stood up and sat in the seat behind me. He reeked of someone who hadn't showered in a while. But I take my seat and class begins. Mrs. H explains that there is a project we have to do, and it's on famous landmarks and their purpose. This was a partner project, and lucky me, I was paired with Kyle. I thought not only was this going to give me a bad grade, but it meant that he had to come over to my house, or I had to go over to his house. Obviously, I didn't want someone to come over to my house, nor did I wish to go anywhere for that matter. So I made a stupid decision and decided to give Kyle my phone number. Everything was alright for the first couple of days. Nothing was creepy besides the look he gave me a few days ago. Except for one afternoon where me and him just finished writing. We both did 2 pages each and we're gonna pick out the highlights from both of them and combine them together. This was a couple hours ago. My parents were out at dinner, and I was home alone playing some computer games, when I heard what sounded like glass shattering from the basement, which was odd because I was on the 2nd floor. Being the coward I am, I decided to pause my game and listen. Not sure what to expect, I sat listening for a good 5 minutes before resuming my game. Another minute goes by, and I can hear the door to the basement open. I don't have any pets besides from the cat I have, which was on my bed at the time. I mute my computer and turn off the monitor, grabbing my phone to dial 911. This was on a landline installed to my room, which was my dad's office for some time. I quickly told the operator the situation, and she had dispatched an officer. I hear silent footsteps up the stairs and begin to panic. It felt like forever, which was only roughly 3 minutes, until I hear sirens. I never felt so safe in my life. That was until my door slammed open. I couldn't see much, but only a mere silhouette of a figure. The sirens passed my window with enough light for me to see the face of Kyle. He doesn't notice me, but he hides in the closet parallel to me. I have never been so scared in my entire fucking life. His facial expression was the same from when I told him to move out of my seat. It's roughly 30 seconds of utter darkness, besides some streetlights glaring through the window. The door slams open, and a cop rushes in, turning on the light and asks me if I'm okay. I scream my fucking lungs out, trying to explain he's in the closet while sobbing. He opens the closet and gets attacked immediately. But luckily, he tases Kyle. I asked the cops why they arrived so fast, only on suspicion. And he told me that the operator said she heard another phone click after I hung up. I handed in the project a week later because I took some time off from school and stayed at my grandparents' house. I got an A. So, Kyle, let's never meet again. Note: I had recently noticed on my Facebook it has my phone number and address on it. Needless to say, that's probably how he got my address. And without a doubt, I took both of them off and set my profile to private. Thank you for listening. Remember, if you like this video, to leave a thumbs up and also subscribe for future content. Remember, if you would like to hear your own true scary story read, you can do so by submitting them to the email in the description below. Until next time though, keep your lights on. You never know what's hiding in the dark.